Do not let your CEO brief or demo in any form or fashion. They're too in love with the product. If you're a small company, they're like, no, I'm going to do it. And it's like, no, you want somebody who can understand how the analyst thinks, because it's a very technical process. You're not trying to sell to them. You're trying to answer the rubrics that they're asking. So you want to really be hands-on. You want to do dry runs of your team. Make sure that they're on point. You want to hear what they're saying. Like, no, don't say it that way. Say it this way, right? That's how the analyst talks.
Welcome to the Marketing Academy Podcast by GCMO, where in every episode we sit down with a marketing expert to deep dive into a hot topic shaping the industry. I'm Yitzy Tannenbaum. Let's get started. Analyst relations is a game that many of us marketers need to play. The thing is, it's a game that you can actually hack. So welcome to the Marketing Playbook Podcast by GCMO, where every episode will dive into a burning marketing topic. Today, I sit down with Rony Vexelman, the VP of Marketing at Optimove, to discuss all things analyst relations, including understanding the industry analyst landscape and how to use the analyst firms to drive your business. Rony, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Yitzy, and thanks for GCMO for doing the podcast. I think it'll be great.
It'll be fun. So before we jump into analyst relations, which is a very close topic to my heart, tell me a little bit about you, about Optimove, what you're doing there.
Yeah, so I'll start with myself. I'm Peruvian. I did Aliyah 18 years ago now, which almost makes me more Israeli than Peruvian just because of how age works. But anyways, I'm here, we're married, 5-month-old kid. It's very weird to say 5-month-old, right? Like you never use that enough. You use it for like 11 months and then you don't use it. And it's like, it's this weird thing.
I assume that you want her to be 5 years at this point.
Oh, but let her be 30. Like, I don't care. Like at this point, it's like, I'm over it.
You get a full night's sleep.
No, but yeah, I've been in Optimove for 6 months. Optimove does marketing automation or CRM marketing for B2C brands globally. Brands like Sephora, like FanDuel, in Israel, like with Terminal X, Delta, a lot of them gaming brands around the world. The marketing team there is about 27 people, spread around the world: London, New York, Dundee, that is Scotland, Brazil, Tel Aviv, of course. And we, do everything from everything. I started there as product marketing, and with that, I built the analyst relations function and kind of like professionalized analyst relations for Optimove. Today, the product marketing team continues that. I'm now in the VP, and I'm more kind of like an advisory role, if you would want to say, with analyst relations. We're actually right now, fun never stops. Magic Quadrant. We'll talk about what that means for those who do not know. Just kicked off. We have a landscape from Forrester, IDC MarketScape, and some other like random stuff going on. So always never a dull day in analyst relations.
And sometimes I feel that they purposely plan it all for the exact same time just to piss us off.
Oh, 100%. They not only that, but they're like, no, we do it once a year. We do it every 18 months. And somehow they always like connect. But you're like, look, I understand that you have to run, analysts, they don't do just one thing, right? They do like multiple markets or multiple verticals or whatever. And you're like, okay, but why do everybody who does MarTech does it on the same quarter? Like you do MarTech and other stuff. So know that the other guy is doing, like, be friends, Let's help out. But it is what it is. All good.
So let's take a step back, right? For those who never heard of analyst firm, what is an analyst firm?
Yeah, 100%. So the best way about thinking of an analyst firm is thinking about a research firm. Analyst firms will just use the word analyst because it's easier. But what they do is they look into a market and they try to explain what is going on in the market from both who are the players, who are the vendors, what is the technologies, what are the best practices, and what's the future of the market. You have to think of them as this institution that has two types of clients. One client is a buyer. A buyer could be, in many times, like an enterprise, retailer, a bank, whoever is interested in technology, right? And we can talk a bit about the history of how this started, like who are the buyers, who speaks to them, et cetera, et cetera. But in general terms, there's a buyer, right? And then there's a seller, right? So let's say Optimove is a seller. I'm a vendor. And there's a buyer, let's say Sephora for the heck of it. Now, Optimove can also be a buyer. right? Because I buy technologies, right? I need, as a company, we need cloud storage, we need cybersecurity, we need a marketing automation platform. So we can perform dual roles. But in general, what you want to think about analyst relations is kind of a firm that's doing research, that's helping inform the market about what is the best solution for them, how can they better use the solutions that they've got, what use cases exist, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. So I think when it comes to a buyer world, so the CMO of Sephora is looking for a marketing automation tool, they will go to Gartner or Forrester or one of those firms and try to get their advice. Which tools should I look at? I think that's pretty straightforward. And I think our focus today and the hacking or gaming that us as marketers can do comes from the vendor side, right? Us as a vendor, we want the Gartner, Forrester analyst, when they talk to the buyer, say, hey, you should check out company X or Y. So what are the levers that I have as a marketer that I could influence that conversation?
Yeah, so when you're working with analyst relations, you have to understand that there's few types of interactions that you can have with an analyst firm. So I'm going to put two out of the way very quickly. One is there's these, almost every firm has events. Okay, right. So Gartner runs what they call the Gartner symposiums, and they run it for different industries. So they have the marketing symposium and the IT symposium and blah, blah, blah. Forrester, I can't remember their name, but everyone has their own, their own event. So that's one thing. You can go to the event, you buy your ticket, you can engage with analysts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You can also do, more grassroots things, like I can connect with them on LinkedIn, I can send them LinkedIn messages, I can send them briefs, right? In terms of hey, I just released this new product, blah, 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 here's some messaging about it, and you can read more in this link. If you have their email, you can do the same thing in email. So let's leave those two aside. By the way, we can later talk about how you mix everything together and do something a bit more strategic around it. But in general, when you're working with an analyst relations firm, there's three main ways to interact with an analyst. The first way is a briefing. A briefing, by the way, anyone can do it. You don't have to be a client. You don't have to pay them to do a briefing. What does a briefing mean? You fill out a form online. You say, I'm interested in speaking with analyst X. This is a topic. This is what I want to brief them about. I have a new product release. I just did a funding round. I got acquired. I acquired someone, whatever, right? I just want to update them on how I'm doing. Like, I have momentum. I've made some big sales, and I want to just update about what's going on. And then you submit it. By the way, analysts do not have to accept the briefing. So the more tailored the pitch of the brief is to the analyst, the better chance you have of that analyst accepting. The second thing is what's called an inquiry. An inquiry is a call with an analyst where you're actually like the buyer, right? You're coming to the analyst to ask them a question. So you're asking them, it could be like, hey, what does the future of AI agents mean for marketing automation, right? And the analyst will tell you what their research is showing, what they're hearing from other companies, from other vendors, from other clients, and you can talk to them. For that, you have to have a license. You have to have paid the analyst firm, for a license to access to the analyst. And in those cases, it's very rare that they will say no. There's certain scenarios, we can talk about it, it's not really core to the problem. The last way is what's called an analyst day or a strategic session, or everyone has different names for it. But basically is you're buying a bank of hours. It could be half a day. It could be a full day. It could be 8 hours that you spread into 2 half a days, et cetera, et cetera. And you basically, sometimes you do it face-to-face, sometimes you do it on Zoom. It depends, right? But you get this centralized time, let's say, right? When a briefing is about 45 minutes to an hour, an inquiry is about 30 minutes. This could be, 4 to 8 hours with the analyst. And for each one, you prepare differently, blah, blah, blah. We can talk about it. But that's kind of like the general landscape of it.
So if I'm a small company and I have limited budget, I can schedule briefings, and maybe once a year, once a half, I'll schedule an analyst day and maybe get that focus time. Would that be like a good mix for someone who has relatively limited budget and doesn't have budget to pay for a full seat?
Yeah, 100%. Like, if I would be small, I would even just start with briefings. Mm-hmm. Like, the way to think about analyst relations is, we're talking about firms.
Right.
What is a firm? How many analysts exist at a major firm? So we didn't even say this, right? There's major firms and boutique firms, right? So a major firm is a Gartner, a Forrester, an IDC. A boutique firm, a firm could be 4 people, all right? 5 people. So it depends. So let's just play on the major. Now you have, let's say you have tens of analysts, at a Gartner. So you're not going to work on everyone, right? You want to find, if you're a small firm, like you're a startup, for example, you have a very specific problem you're solving, then there might be just one or two analysts at a firm the size of Gartner that are relevant to you.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're briefing, to your example, right? If you're briefing them, you come and you say, let's do an introductory briefing the first time I've ever talked to this person, right? I'm just going to present myself. This is what we do. This is what, and then you're going to say, okay, hey, you know what? Would it be okay that in 6 months, we catch up again? I'll tell you new sales, how momentum, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So you have these different analysts that you're just touching every X amount of time. And that's enough, right? Then you might say, okay, now I'm at a point I'm a bit more mature as a company. So maybe now I bring in an analyst day or a strategic session or whatever you want to call it. Licenses help. I think that for someone who's at the beginning of the road, it might be overkill. It depends also what you're trying to achieve. And there's certain scenarios where I could be convinced that a startup should buy a license from the get-go.
But we should mention that those licenses are not cheap. They are somewhere between 60 and 80K, if I recall.
USD and not NIS.
That is true. Although you did mention those larger firms and smaller firms, and I've had people ask me where to focus their time, right? I could take all my efforts and choose a Forrester and Gartner and put all my energy there, and I may get placed in an MQ that I'm somewhat happy with. The alternative is to take your time and effort and pick a mid-sized firm that still has a name, an IDC, an Omdia, Cooping & Cole, and maybe be the top there. Any thoughts on how to spend your time or how to choose a strategy when it comes to gigantic firms and those mid-level tier 2?
Yeah,
firms?
but I'll back up for a second.
Okay.
We're all driven by something we can measure.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, like humanity is driven by measurement. Okay, everything. Think about a car. It has like the speedometer. Everything has something that you can measure. So people come and say, why do I want to do analyst relations? Oh, because I want that dot on the magic quadrant or on a wave or on a MarketScape or on a compass. I think it's Cooper & Cole. Each one has their own name, right? And that's not, that's one of the goals. It shouldn't be your main goal, okay? And we can talk why that isn't, because the way that the dots are placed doesn't necessarily mean that you're in a bad place or in a good place.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot more that goes into reading our report, and we'll talk about it when we talk about enablement and everything. So the first thing is, if you're going into this just to get the dot, like the dot gives you a lot of brand value in terms of like awareness. Oh, my name is there with whoever is a player. If I'm young and if I'm a more mature company, then my name is hopefully, in a better place. But it's not the end of be all. There's a reason to do analyst relations in terms of impacting your buyers and reaching your buyers in a way that you would never know about it. No one will tell you if an analyst is recommending you to a company unless that company tells you, right? And we've had this.
Right.
Like we today know, I won't say the client, but we today know of large enterprise clients that spoke with our core analysts before they spoke to us. And we know that the core analysts shortlisted us. And this is not because we were in a report or not in a report. It's because you build that relationship with the analyst and you're convincing them that you have a solution that solves the problems of that client that they're talking to. So that's just a parenthesis here for the thing. And of course, I forgot the question, so I'll try to remember that, remind myself that it was about where should I focus?
Right. On the large or small or both, how would you,
so
if your team is smaller than 27 people and you have to focus your efforts and spend, how would you make that decision?
So I would say that it depends on who your clientele is.
Okay.
So, for example, let's take, you mentioned Cooper & Cole, small firm, mainly DACH region focused, right? So if I am a startup or a company that is trying to either penetrate the DACH region or that's where my core market is, then I don't have to talk to Gartner and Forrester. It's like those core markets are the US, right? Right now I'm focused in the DACH region. So maybe I go to Cooper, that's where I put my eggs in that basket. Also in Gartner and Forrester, right? It's what analyst they focus on. I could choose one analyst and just work on them, or I could choose a profession, right? A market, and I'd go into one analyst at each firm, but just for that market. So there's different ways of building this so that you're efficient with your time. When I started, I was a one-man show. I was doing both product marketing and analyst relations, and that required, to be very strategic with who do you inquire, who do you brief, how do you interact with these people? And I built very strong relationships with very few limited number of analysts. But it ends up paying off because that is the strategic thing to do for your company if you look at it that way.
Right. Relationships will play a big part, I think, in AR, both with our account manager and specific analysts. And I think you and I both probably formed really deep connections with some of these industry analysts, and we've become friends with them, and in different events we'll go out. And I think that's a big part of analyst relations a little bit.
100%. At the end of the day, they're people. Right, and people get attracted to people, and it's kind of like it's just a matter of you could have good vibes, you could have bad vibes with a person,
right?
And at the end of the day, everyone, as much as you try to be subjective, you're objective. You're always a bit subjective,
right? So we were talking about briefings, we were talking about inquiries. Briefings, we said, is the vendor presents to the analyst. It's an hour session. Anyone. A startup, you're not a client, you can still submit for a briefing. What should I think about when preparing for a briefing? What do I need to know? And making sure that I get the most out of that hour? Because sometimes, especially if I'm small, all I'm getting is that hour once 6 months, once a year. So how do I make the best of that hour?
I'll tell you the first thing that someone told me when they were teaching me about analyst relations is do not sales pitch them. So many companies, especially smaller companies that don't have experience in AR, what they will do, they'll set up a briefing. They got the briefing approved. They'll come in with their intro deck, right? This is my pitch. I'm going to sell to you like, hey, this is a problem in the world, and I'm great, and I solved the problem, and everybody is singing Kumbaya in the background, right? And here are 5 features that make it amazing. And if you have any questions, let me know, right? Basically, like, that's like the framework. And then I was sitting there like, dude, you're like, that's not my jam, right? So you really have to think about analysts and how they think about the world. They're interested in very few things. One is, and the main thing of all of the very few things is, how are you, the person that's briefing me, relevant to my clientele? So if I'm a startup selling to SMBs, and I'm going to Gartner, probably like, I'd have nothing to do with you. Like, I can't recommend you to Chase Bank, right? Like, just doesn't work that way. So you really have to think about how do you tailor your pitch to that analyst and to what they care. So what do they care about? They care about who you are as a company, meaning, this is the market I play in. Now, note, different analysts call the same market different things. So I'll take Optimove for an example, right? Optimove in Gartner is a multi-channel marketing hub. In Forrester, they just changed it. It's a cross-channel marketing hub. In IDC, it's an omni-channel marketing hub. And now it's an AI marketing automation platform. Categories, names, things. So you have to know. You have to say, hey, I am a multi-channel marketing hub. I understand your language. I speak your language, right? By the way, the best thing you can do before a briefing is read what the analyst has written. If you don't have a license, look for them on LinkedIn, Twitter, blah, blah, blah. Try to figure out how do these people talk, and use their words when you're presenting, just so that they can easily capture. You have an hour of their attention. You want to not make it difficult for them to capture. So we said they care about what category you're in. They care about your financials. Like, I'm this big, I have raised this money, I have this amount of revenue. But more importantly, they care about your trajectory. So this is how I've been growing, right? These are some big clients, or these are some clients that are relevant to you that I could, back to the DACH example that from before. Hey, here's 3 companies in Germany or in the region that I work with. And these are the use cases. They care a lot about the use cases. What are you solving? How do you solve it? And then they want to see the product. Analysts want to understand why you're different. You want to come with a demo that is not a sales demo per se, but you're explaining what is the difference, what is the power of your product, why it's unique, what makes it stand out. And that's usually I'll say the core of a briefing, if it's your first briefing, right? Then you do have specialized briefings. We're right now going through a repositioning of Optimove and a rebranding of Optimove. So the briefing is a bit different. It has a different vibe to it because I'm trying to get feedback on the new messaging and whatever, but it's a bit different.
Out of curiosity, why would you choose a briefing for that and not an inquiry?
So when you have the luxury of having a license, you can double dip. So I come with a briefing and I do an inquiry on the briefing. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times that allows me to do 2 things. If I'm you mentioned, right, a briefing, you said very clearly, is the vendor briefing the analyst. Many analysts, depending on the firm, but many analysts do not ask questions during a briefing. They're quiet for an hour. It's a very weird experience. There's others that are, they talk and it's fine. It varies between firms and people. It doesn't matter. But so, I can brief you on my messaging. Hey, this is my messaging, right? We're going out. We're talking about positionless marketing. This is what positionless marketing means, and this is why it's so great, and this is why it's so different, and you're like, okay. So did he like it? Did he not like it? What did I learn? So then I go into an inquiry, and I ask them, okay, hey, we gave you this briefing. Please provide us feedback. Here are some questions. Do you think it's going to resonate with your audience? Do you think it's unique in the market? Do you think it differentiates us from our competitors, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? If I would go just with an inquiry, in an inquiry, it basically roles should be flipped. So the analyst is the one talking to you. You're coming with questions, and they are the one doing 80% of the talking. So in a specific scenario of me trying to provide, to get feedback on my messaging, I would build it that way. There is another option. Some firms do offer content reviews, text reviews, so you could submit documentation, and I could do it as an inquiry, right? So I could submit documentation, then the analyst would read it, and then we'd come to an inquiry and we would discuss their feedback to it. Different forms to get to the same result at the end of the day.
So when we look at inquiries, I feel like, at least here, we don't know how to use inquiries. We'll use it once every few months, license holders. And I feel, and I've learned this with time, I'll set up an inquiry for anything. I wrote a solution brief. Great. Analysts give me feedback. I'm thinking about a roadmap item. Hey, let's do that. I'm trying to penetrate a market. And I think that we don't use it enough. So how would you recommend using inquiries and also maybe promoting them within the company, getting people more engaged with the analyst community?
Yeah, so a few things here. I think that one is depends on your bandwidth.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I used to say when I was an individual contributor, like, I'm going to try and speak with my core analysts. I had a list of like 6 core analysts. I'm going to try to speak with them once a quarter, once a half is like the maximum that I'm willing to go without that. That ends up being a briefing every 2 weeks, or an inquiry, every 2 weeks.
Yep.
Don't catch me on the math. It was like 6, it was 5, it was whatever. At the end of the day, that was like the goal.
Right.
Okay? Because you have different, or let's call it an interaction every 2 weeks. Okay? So it could be a briefing, it could be it depends. It's an interaction every 2 weeks. Now, there's people who will come and will say, no, I want to do more. I should be doing one a week, right? I should be doing one a day. It really depends on, if I would have all what I would be doing is analyst relations, then I'd be doing one a day, maybe even 2 a day, because that's all I'm doing. Like my job is to maximize that, right? So it depends a lot on the research you've got. What I will say is the subtext of what I hear in your question is, what are the instances I should use an inquiry for? So we were talking off camera about what is called a hidden briefing, right? So I could do an inquiry, a very straight up inquiry, where I'm asking the analyst, hey, I want to penetrate this market, for example. What are your thoughts? This is my strategy. This is how my GTM looks. Now, remember, we said at the beginning, there's buyers, there's sellers. You're a seller. You might be playing the role of a buyer, but you're a seller. Your job is not to look dumb. If you're going to come to the analyst and you're like, hey, I have no freaking idea how to enter this market. Please help me. I'm lost here. My boss is going to kill me tomorrow. Not great for your company, right? And the analyst, remember, at the end of the day, writes a report, and we'll talk about reports later. So you want to come and you want to say, how do I ask him questions or ask them questions, and how do I position my answers so that I'm actually getting benefit, both for what I really wanted, which was I wanted to understand how to penetrate this market, but also so that this analyst goes back and says, these guys, they're onto something here. It's another, hedge on the belt. How do you call it? What do you say that? What's the saying? Whatever. Another trophy in your trophy drawer with that analyst. So I think that's one thing. The second thing is, I think we as Israelis, we're very or skeptical or what's the word? Sarcastic is the word, maybe, about like analysts and what they actually know and how much they know about things.
Because we're the smartest person in the room at all time, right?
Yeah, obviously. And if you're working in a small startup and you have either a young, very smart founder or an experienced founder who succeeded in the past, right? Both behave basically the same, irrational confidence, which sometimes is very good to be a founder of a startup, right? If you don't have irrational confidence, it's just not going to work. But for analysts, they're like, these guys don't know. And you're like, no, like, look, we have to get buy-in of the company saying like, okay, look, hey, maybe you're right. Maybe these guys are wrong in this specific point, but let's hear them out, right? Let's see what they have, because sometimes out of the 10 pieces of feedback you've got, 2 of them or 1 of them is going to be a game changer for you. So I think that to your point, the more you can use them, right? You're thinking about repackaging your platform. You're thinking about pricing your platform. You're thinking about entering a new market, entering a new region. You're thinking about launching a new product, repositioning, remessaging. You're even thinking about a new website. Like, hey, we're going to design a new website. Like, this is the flows we've got. Here are some wireframes. Like, what do you think? This is how a product page looks like. What do you think? I've seen them used for everything. And I think that it's a question of bandwidth. It's a question of belief. And it's a question of internal selling to the company as well.
I personally love just to have someone I could bounce ideas off of, and someone I can talk to and they can say no, right? I could come with an idea, with a thought, with a marketing plan, with a product, and say, hey, what do you think about this? So that excites me, that I have someone who really knows the industry and knows the competition that I could just bounce ideas off of. I've used them in the past for competitive intelligence. I use them for naming. I needed to name a product, and I was able to find a professional in product naming, which I really liked. But on that point of choosing inquiries, I really like those few select analysts that I work with, having them feel part of building the product. So I start very early on with just looking at the landscape, and as the idea comes and as the product is built, I'm able to get their advice. So hopefully when Chase calls them up or Sephora calls them up and says, hey, I'm looking for this in this product, they'll say, hey, check out Palo Alto Networks. Why? Because I was part of that building. It's almost my product. So I think when we spoke about relationships, that's another, and it's time consuming and it does take thought and you need the bandwidth for that. But if you could do it and do it successfully, it could really influence that, I think.
It definitely does. I think it's part of, again, it goes back to them being people. Okay, so they want to feel part of the journey.
Yes.
Right? So yesterday night, I had this conversation with my director of product marketing, and we have a briefing coming up next week with one of our core analysts, and we were talking about how are we going to present this concept of positionless marketing, and we know that this analyst is half skeptic on the idea, and then we started talking about this new company we acquired, about gamification, and I asked him, hey, are we presenting this in the briefing as well, or is it too much? Like, let's have this conversation. And he was like, I don't know how we can tie it in. And we were talking, and I was like, you know what? Let's tie it in. I'll show you something. And I went and I showed him a deck we prepared for Summit Partners, which are investor in Optimove, when we were doing the funding round. And this deck included an M&A strategy. It said, hey, part of the funds you're going to give us, we're going to use it for M&A strategy, and this is a strategy. And this is a 2020. And today we're in 2025, and I told him, look at all these boxes we said we were check, and now think about the acquisitions we've done and the products we've developed in-house. Have we checked all of these boxes? He's like, yeah. I'm like, that's the story we tell him. Because he was there when we told him, we've raised this round. This is what we're going to use these funds in. And now you're coming back 5 years later, and you're telling them, you remember I told you that? Right? This is what we've done with these funds, and this is how our product has evolved. You make him part of the journey, right? So in your example, if I'm bringing you early in the product and say, hey, we're thinking about this challenge that our customers have and how we could solve it, right? Do you think it's a challenge? Like, do your customers, okay, cool. Here's like 2 possible ways we're thinking about solving this, right? And this doesn't have to be all in one inquiry, right? You can do it like over time. Oh, cool. 3 months later, hey, we have a prototype, Or we did some user testing. This is what we heard about from clients. Like, what do you think about this? Right. And then, 2 months later, here's the brief for the release, right? Could you, let's look at the messaging. So you're bringing them on the journey, be it 5 years, be it 6 months, whatever it takes to do that. And I think that's super important. And they appreciate that, right? I'm a lot of times I hear analysts, and I'm removed now. I'm not in the day-to-day with the analysts, and sometimes I meet with them at events, and I hear them saying, like, I appreciate you taking the time and bringing me on, and I'm bringing up to date on all the stuff that you talked about me about like 2 years ago, 1 year ago, whatever it is.
Wow. It's cool. It's cool that they'll actually tell you that they appreciate it. But very often you hear between the lines that they enjoy being part of the process.
Look, they're people, we all, you said it, right? You build relationships. Some of them become friends.
Yep.
Some of them become frenemies. I had an analyst that like literally asked for a lot of information on the company, and then 2 months later was working at a competitor. And to God, I do not know if he took or not took the information. Like theoretically, he can't take the information with him, but like,
wow.
This has video, so you can see my mannerisms.
That's a big one for sure. But it's a small industry, and everyone knows everyone. And by the way, I think there's value to be said. It took me a while to understand this. The first 2, 3, 4 minutes of an inquiry needs to be just like schmoozing, talking about life, small talk. It's building the relationship in addition to the technicalities of the inquiry.
Look, I think that there was one thing, this podcast, when we talked about it last week, was it last week? Was this week? I don't know. Anyways, having a 5-month-old daughter.
There you go.
We talked about it and we said, like, this is not only for people who are VPs and experienced, but mostly or mainly also for people who are just starting. And I think there's something important to say about this. When I talk about how I see analyst relations, when you talk about how you approach analyst relations, we talk about it with years of experience. In mine, it's 6 years of doing this. 6 years of doing this, and a few experiences here or there before that. I don't know how long you've been doing this.
I'm trying to think when I got my first Gartner seat. I think it was 2017. I'm also not great at math, but
so that's 8 years.
It's been a while, yeah.
And probably that's your first seat. You probably were exposed to this before that.
Yes, sir.
So I want to let everyone understand that one of the main things that you learn with time is that 30 minutes is a lot, or an hour is a lot. And it's both good and bad. So on one end, I remember my first few inquiries, like, hi, how are you doing? Here are my questions. And today it's like, hey, hey, oh, you're in San Fran. Cool. Like, how's the weather down there? What are you planning to do for the symposium this year? This is what we're working on, blah, 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 blah. Maybe you're 10 minutes in and you're like, oh, shuck. Like, I don't know if I can curse here, so I'll just use shuck.
The second time you used I think you said frick instead of other things. So I appreciate it. This is a PJ
I don't
podcast.
know. That's something that we're talking about, changing languages, right?
There you go.
English, I swear, like I don't know why. I just swear in English. No other language I swear that much. Anyways, back to the point. So when you approach an inquiry, and when you approach a briefing, take a breath. If you're new to this, right? Like, be yourself. You'll be okay. It's fine also to make mistakes. It's fine to that you come out of a briefing or an inquiry and like, I don't know if I actually got what I wanted. Like, okay, it's fine, right? It's a process. You get there. And part of that is actually when you were talking about, like, starting and building that relationship and having that like chit chat or small talk. Yeah, it's part of it. I remember I had an analyst, not a core analyst. It was like something on the side, and she had an SB. So the SBs are ESPN's awards for athletes and whatnot. And she had an SB in the background. I'm like, is that an SB? like, I didn't even say hi.
Right.
I'm like, is that an SB? And she's like, yeah, I used to be a reporter for ESPN. I used to work NFL, I think it was, and I got an SB for my work. I'm like, that's freaking cool. And now you're doing Gartner work. Like, why? But that's a different. But so really connect with the person, right, and take it easy and learn and understand that it's a process, right? You're not going to get from you're not going to start at 100 miles per hour.
It's funny. I feel like for every analyst, you kind of learn their thing. This one is into golf, and this one is a new father, and this one collects well, everyone has their own thing, and I just like we always go back to that and like, how's your shot, or did you buy a new CD, whatever they're into, and you build that relationship, and it's a relationship.
And I will say, most of the podcast listeners here probably live in Israel. You're Israeli, you're Jewish. You'd be surprised how far that goes. I have an analyst that, he's Jewish, lives in the States, right? I know his synagogue. Like it's this weird relationship where we like each time I see him, like, hey, how are things going? And then we talk about Israel and how things are going in Israel and how things are going for the San Diego community, and how his kids are, and it's a thing, right?
Although politics is very dicey, I would geopolitical situations, you have to be delicate with that.
Look, it's not. I'm not saying come and bash or advocate for the whoever politician you're talking about, but I'm saying use what you can. So I went to business school in the U.S. I studied at UCLA, Anderson. My master's is from there, and the number one rule of networking is find common ground. Common ground can be, oh, the ESPYs. Oh, you're an NFL. Oh, I'm a Dolphins fan. That's common ground. Common ground can be, oh, you're Jewish from San Diego. Awesome. Like, I'm Jewish from Peru. Like, I know how Judaism in the diaspora sucks. like, you understand? You just don't have to go. And then, this guy, I've known him for 6 years now. I feel more comfortable talking to him about certain stuff when I meet him in person than somebody who I met yesterday, and that's fine because we have a relationship, right? Going back to that point. So
it's funny when some of them leave the firm. In very rare cases, I almost felt like a breakup a little bit. I built this relationship, and the relationship is no more. So
let's talk about that. So have you ever reached out? I'm flipping the script here. Am I allowed to do that? I don't know.
You'll get a fine. We'll send it to you in the mail after.
Have you ever tried to reach out to an analyst that leaves the firm to get information?
To get information, no, but to check in, just, hey, man, like, hey, let's be in touch. And people, the industry is so small that people, you meet them in different places and it kind of comes and goes. And so have you, I assume you're asking because you have.
No, I have never.
Interesting.
I've never done it. And it's something that I've always, like I said, like, first of all, unfortunately, there's not a lot of movement. Okay, it happens sometimes, but there's not a lot of movement. But I'd be interesting. By the way, if there's anybody listening who's done this, please, Rony Vexelman, look me up on LinkedIn. I know if we're sharing or tell me, because we're all part of theater in analyst relations. Okay, we're all playing a role. If you could get one of the actors off his acting role, but as his person, right? If you could get, Downey Jr. not as Tony Stark, but as Downey Jr., right? He'll tell you a lot of stuff about Marvel that you might. I'm a Marvel guy, so right that he won't tell you if he's in his acting role. So if you could take an analyst and be like, you're no longer Ronnie from Forrester, you're just now Ronnie, like. Would you be willing to share stuff that you wouldn't share otherwise?
So the other way to do this would be 2 a.m. Las Vegas, black hat at some party somewhere.
At the back of a bar somewhere.
But that's a conversation for a whole different day. I do want to go back. You mentioned this throughout. I also really like how you kind of took the whole Magic Quadrant and wave and talked about it as a dot. I think that kind of like, we put so much effort into a dot and moving it a few millimeters. But let's talk a little bit about the process that actually you and I are both currently in different industries. How do we start? What are they? How do they influence? Can you talk a little bit about the analyst reviews?
Yeah. So an analyst review is what we talked about: Magic Quadrant, Wave, MarketScape, Compass. Each one calls it differently. At the end of the day, if you're trying to imagine this in your head and you still haven't gone to Google or ChatGPT and just asked it and you've got an image, basically what you're looking at is some way of putting dots that are vendors, each dot is a vendor, on a map and categorizing that map in Magic Quadrant in quadrants, a wave in waves, each one in their own way and manner, basically saying these are leaders, these are challengers, these are visionaries, these are niche players, these are, I don't know, there's 100 different words for these. Those are Gartner's words, by the way, in the quadrant. Now, Magic Quadrants, anyone, I'll use Magic Quadrants for simplicity, okay? But any report of this magnitude happens in a cycle. So it's a cycle of the Magic Quadrant, for example, is once a year, every 12 months. Waves usually are 18 months. And each one is a bit different. I think IDC does them every year or something like that. They have a bit more leeway in their timelines. They can only take a number of vendors, right? So there's a maximum and a minimum number of vendors. We can talk about that a bit later in terms of the minimum and why that's important. But they kick off, let's say, the Magic Quadrant for multi-channel marketing hubs, which is the one that Optimove partakes in. We received an email that it was, so you receive an email that usually is like, hey, this is the qualification criteria. We're inviting you to say that you have the qualification criteria. And that email, let's say that it happened 3 weeks ago, maybe. And then they say, okay, in 2 weeks, we will send you that you're in, and we will send you a confirmation of the package, and then we'll give you the whole timeline. Usually, from that moment to the moment that you have to submit everything, and we'll talk in a second what submit everything means, is from when you get the package, 3 weeks. Maybe give or take 3 weeks. Sounds good. Like, so maybe it's a bit more. It depends really on how long the questionnaire is and whatever. But usually 3 weeks is kind of like a good average. By the way, you can ask for extensions. Do it. Most people don't know that. I didn't know it for years. Going back to like...
I actually got a message yesterday saying no, we tried to postpone something because of the holiday, because of Passover. And we were told no, but you can always ask.
So last year we got an extension. This year we've asked an extension because our user conference was last week, so we lost a week.
Oh, okay.
Like I was like, look guys, my whole team is at the user conference. Like, no one is working on this. Help me out. And I know at Adobe Summit wasn't the same week, although Adobe's a giant firm, so maybe they have people who can actually work while they're at Adobe Summit. But we'll see. Anyways, that's like 3 weeks. Usually then they will take like a month to do what they say is a fact check, right? So they'll send you, this is what we wrote about you. These are the results. You can, fact check us and say, no, you didn't understand here, or you didn't understand that. And I think we should maybe break this down step by step because there's a lot of information on every single step. And then it gets released. Usually, so Magic Quadrant, in theory, starts in January. By June, it's out.
Right.
Last year, it was out in October. It started in January. It was out in October. I've seen delays and delays. We can talk about why. That's less important why it happens. It's just anecdotal. Just one thing before we dive into this, something that's important for people who are starting maybe is when you're in a report cycle, you are blacked out from your analysts. So what I mean is if Rony is your analyst and I'm writing a report, you will not be able to talk to me since the moment that the report was announced to the moment the report is released. So when that's 6 months, it's 6 months that you're not talking to your core analyst. Again, forget about Vegas, bars, etc. Leave that aside. And if it goes up until October, you're basically a full year not talking to an analyst. So that's that. I will. Yeah, go ahead.
I should say that if you're in a big company and you may be in different industries, you may have the same analyst covering multiple industries. So even if you want to talk to them about something completely unrelated, you still can talk to them.
Interesting. I did not know that. I thought that you would have said that you can talk about the other topic and not mention anything else.
Right. So we're about to launch a completely different product in a different industry, different MQ. That MQ is not in play, but because they are the author of the other industry, it overlaps and you can't do that.
Wow. So the reason I bring this up is because I said it starts in January.
Mm-hmm.
I will say now with experience, the MQ never starts and never ends. So what you learn over time is that you're always working toward that report and around that report. Even when you're doing a secret briefing, right? Like within an inquiry, you are building towards that report. You're trying to understand what is the analyst interested in? How do I position myself better? When you're doing a momentum brief, middle of the year, just saying like, hey, I briefed you in January for the MQ, but we're in August. Let me tell you what I've done until then. We're talking about a new product release, when you're talking about a new acquisition or a new investment or whatever it is, you're always building towards that next report. Is that the right way of looking at things? That's a question. Okay, and that is because, again, management is obsessed with a position on a quadrant. But I think that if you allow me to take control over the interview, let's break this quadrant down, and then let's talk about why the result at the end of the day is not really the end of the thing. Does it work?
Go crazy.
I don't know. People are going to get bored of my voice. Like, I don't have the best voice, right? It's not like a sexy voice or like this very encompassing voice. It's just a voice, and you're on a podcast, and it's like...
I don't know. I think you have a deep, soothing voice.
I have a radio voice. Like, I have my podcast voice.
So there you go. You're doing it.
My wife listened to the first podcast I ever did, and she's like, you don't talk like that. Anyways, so...
you're breaking down the MQ process.
The MQ process.
Because it is complex.
It is complex. So you have this thing that's called qualification criteria. Qualification criteria is broken down into both business criteria. It could be a number of revenue, number of new clients, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It could also be product criteria. Usually it's a mix of both. Okay, so you should be able to do X, Y, Z, and cool. That's pretty straightforward. Usually try to find ways to say yes to do the thing.
We may also want to say that anyone, even if you're not a client, you can still participate in the MQ.
Yes. So if you're a company and you're up and coming and you're working for them, and we go back to the example of briefing analysts and working with your core analysts, right? You're doing that so they're aware of you. Usually if you're a small company, your way in is what in Gartner is called a cool vendor. I can't remember what Forrester called them. They also have like these things, or a market guide, right? And that means, okay, I'm on the radar. Now this analyst knows about me. And you're going to brief them. And eventually, remember we talked about briefings and we said like part of it is financials, right? So eventually the analyst is going to be like, the company is now big enough to be an MQ, right? Or to be in a wave or to be in a MarketScape. And that's how you get into there. But yeah, so that's the first part. And then you get usually two things asked from you. Three. I always forget about the third one because they've changed it so many times. One is a questionnaire. The questionnaire can be 100 questions. Like, what's the largest one you've seen?
300 probably.
So I know that IT industries have a lot larger questionnaires, and the questionnaire can be things as simple as, one question is, what was your revenue for year ending 2024, or what is your vision of the top 5 trends for the market in the next 3 years? Okay, so it varies greatly. So some people say 300 questions and it ends up being a lot of work. I'm not saying 300 questions are not a lot of work. Some questions are simpler to answer than others. Then you have a demo, okay, briefing. Usually this would be between an hour and a half, 2 hours, depends. In the past it used to be live. Now mostly they do it recorded.
I think Gartner won it recorded, but Forrester still won it live, if I recall. At least in
I think you're right.
world.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
I think you're right. And then you have customer references. So Gartner used to do surveys, then they bought Peer Insights, and they have now something like G2 Crowd for those who do not know what Peer Insights is. G2 Crowd, I'm dating myself, G2. So they asked for references to be submitted to peer reviews. By the way, check out their guidelines. Peer reviews, they have like, if it's under 50 mil, it won't publish. They have like, they're very strict in what can go on and what can't go on. And Forrester will do like interviews, and IDC will do interviews and whatnot. So that's the submission. Okay. And then there's usually, sometimes they do like so Gartner now has installed like a Q&A call that they can, because it's recorded, so they're like, oh, we actually wanted to talk to these guys and ask them questions of what they're presenting, so let's have a Q&A call. And then they have this fact check, whereas they're sending you what they've written, and you can dispute what is written. This is maybe, I won't say it's the most critical part, because obviously the most critical part is the batch of the 3 things you're submitting, but this is extremely critical. You could change words. You're not going to change what is there. Like if they've given you, so Gartner writes, for example, I think they call it benefits and cautions. You're not going to change the caution. If there's a caution there that says your UX is bad, or your customers feel your support sucks, or you're not good in the US, it's going to be written there. The question is how it's going to be written. And you're fighting to make the wording more beneficial to you. You can also dispute, by the way, your placement on dot or whatever. Very quickly, because I know we don't have a lot of time, you do not want to work on this alone. In Optimove, we're a smallish company. The moment that the MQ lands, we have a call. It's the director of product marketing. It's myself as a VP marketing. It's our SVP product. We have a director of product and a director of solution engineering. Those are the people we have. And we prepare together. The questionnaire is even vetted even broader sometimes, right? Sometimes you need somebody from security, from compliance, from finance to give you numbers. You do want to have one person who is the reviewer of everything, that understands what they're looking at and making sure that, things make sense across.
Who should do that?
It will depend. If you have an analyst relations person, professional, then maybe that's the person to do it.
Although they tend to not really know the product well enough, from my experience.
So it depends. Again, it really depends on the size of the.
Yeah.
So for us, at the end of the day, it's the director of product marketing. He is the quarterback. He is the one leading it, right? Mm-hmm. I will read almost all of the questionnaire, right? And I'll even go and look at the numbers that we're submitting.
Right.
But if it's an analyst relations professional, and there's two types of analyst relations professionals. There's the ones that are kind of like the quarterback. I'm just like, the switchboard. I'm like, hey, come talk to this person, right? Or that's one thing. And there's some that come from product marketing or come from things that they have a bit more of product. Usually, as the larger the firm becomes, they become the former, right? Like the analyst person is more just like a project manager kind of thing.
It's funny. I'm very fortunate. I think we have, only for the product I'm working on, we have one of both. So I kind of see them as like sales and SE. So the sales does the partying and the relationship piece, and the SE will do the demos and the more technical inquiries and the more talking about the product. But I know that I am very, very lucky, and there are probably a handful of firms, probably in the IT security space, and they kind of all know each other. Maybe 20, 30 companies that actually have that many AR people.
That's interesting.
It's
but it's an interesting look at like sales and SEs. I like it. So going back to the demo, then the demo, you're preparing that, right? You're briefing. Do not let your CEO brief or demo in any form or fashion. They're too in love with the product. If you're a small company, they're like, no, I'm going to do it. And it's like, no, you want somebody who can understand how the analyst thinks, because it's a very technical process. You're not trying to sell to them. You're trying to answer the rubrics that they're asking. So you want to really be hands-on. You want to do dry runs of your team. Make sure that they're on point. You want to hear what they're saying. Like, no, don't say it that way. Say it this way, right? That's how the analyst talks, et cetera, et cetera.
I will add that in the last wave, we did 9. Now, in the wave, it's a 90-minute demo and presentation. We did 9 full dry runs where we timed it, and every single piece was timed and made sure we were in time. And if we needed to shorten a section, we would do that. We take it very, very seriously.
No, you have to. And we have no time, so I'm just going to say what happens once it's come out.
Right.
Okay. And I'm going to say the following. Usually what's going to happen, you're going to say, we did great, right? Even if you're in the first time, you got into the MQ. Sorry, before that, one last thing. Look at, if you're doing it year after year, look at what were your cautions last year, what were your weaknesses last year. See if you can, make up for them this year in your answers and in your demo and briefing. But you come up and you're like, oh, we did great. We're in the magic quadrant. And someone is like, usually it's someone in sales. It's like, yeah, but we're a niche player and like there's leaders and like I can't use this. No, you're getting it wrong. So let me explain really quickly. There's leaders, there's bottom feeders. No, they're not because they're bottom feeders, just because the graph has bottom, right? Everyone has the same write-up. Everyone has strengths. Everyone has cautions. So you can say, look, right, I'm a niche player. That's actually good, because I'm great if you're in my niche. And if you're in my niche, the leader is not going to look at you. But you are a perfect fit with me. Or I'm a visionary. What does that mean? I'm not a leader. Yeah, because the leaders are larger, they have more money, blah, 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 blah. But I am the future. right? Or I'm a challenger. I'm not a leader. But you know what? I am the one person that they get mad about. I am different. I challenge them. So you can use your positioning anywhere in this. The second thing I'm going to say is both Forrester and Gartner and IDC, they all give scores to capabilities. In Gartner, it's called critical capabilities. In Forrester, I can't remember what the name is. But sometimes the quadrant is less important as the capabilities. So we were ranked number 1 for many years in a use case, which is critical capabilities have critical capabilities and they have use cases. So I would tell sales, forget about the Magic Quadrant. Don't show that even. Just tell them Gartner ranked us number 1 for journey orchestration in the critical capabilities for the multi-channel marketing hubs Magic Quadrant. Use that, right? So there's different ways of using this to celebrate your success and your inclusion. If you're a small firm, you can always come and say, now we're with the big guys, right? Like that's what I would do, right? I'm like, now I'm with the big guys now. Like these guys are afraid. Give me 5 years, I'll be up there, right? But you always have to be thinking about how you're using the results. It's not always about being the dot to the furthest up to the right.
I heard somewhere that the larger organizations have a lot more to lose than the startups, because a startup, if you get into that leadership quadrant, you are top of the world. And I worked at a smaller company that we got there. We were number 2, and it was just amazing. It really blew us up. I feel like a big company, you only have what to lose, because if you're not a leader, then wait, why are you not a leader? You're a Fortune 500 company. You're the top company in this world. So it could be a little bit riskier for you. I think startups have a lot to gain if, they're the top 3 huge companies everyone heard of, and you're rinky-dinky 300-person startup, it could put you in a whole new league. So that could be really exciting.
I always said internally that we're punching above our weight. The fact that Optimove is the number 1 challenger or the number 1 visionary, right, on that axis, when you're competing with things like Salesforce and Adobe, right, and you're higher up or further right than them, you're like, it's ridiculous. Like, celebrate it to death, right? Like beat it to death, because it's just so incredible that that's what you're leading with, right? To your point, I don't think it's only the large ones. I think that if you're a good AR person and you've built a good AR practice and a good process in your company, and you're succeeding, right? And now you're in the quadrant and you're moving up, and suddenly you're like, oh, now I'm a bit like nervous for next year. I don't want to, I can't move back. But do know things change. It moves up and down year over year. Do not fret if 1 year you go down, 1 year you go up. It really is. Analysts change. The market changes. Their view on the market changes. The way they score changes. Sorry. We're almost done. So do not fret, right?
Yeah, that makes total sense. It's a complex process. It isn't easy, but the rewards can be very, very high. And then if you do well, then you get the reprint rights and you put it on your website, and the salespeople use it as a sales tool. Maybe a sentence or two about enablement and how to give sales the tools from AR, from analyst relations, to go to customers and to evangelize your company's success.
Sure, 100%. So real quick, 1, I love creating a slide that takes the scores and puts all your competitors and allows the salespeople to choose what competitors to show and what scores to show. So it's just a graph and you can just filter, right? And this allows you to be like, oh, you're in a competitive deal with this person? Good. So take these 2 critical capabilities or these 3 critical and show them, because they show us very well against this competitor, right? And pretend like the worst doesn't happen. And if you get asked, then tell them, yeah, there's others, but these are the ones I think that are relevant for you because your use cases, this is what's important, blah, blah, blah. That's 1. 2, the number 1 thing that people think that you should do with the Magic Quadrant is send the Magic Quadrant to everyone. No. Like, no one is going to read it. It's like 60 pages long. The wave is like 40 pages long. Like, people don't want to read 40 pages. So contextualize it, right? So I would usually write up maybe a 1-pager or a short paragraph. This is the key takeaways for Optimove, right? Write a script. Hey, we just got included in XYZ report. This is what it means, right? So that the salesperson is just repeating that short script of 30 seconds to the prospect that they're talking to. The last thing I'll say is You mentioned reprints. Reprints are, if you thought the seed is expensive, reprints are extremely expensive for some reason. I know why, but it's like ridiculous. You do want to somehow find the way to bridge the information for people. Not everyone reads what Gartner writes. And what I mean by that is it's written in a very specific technical terminology, a Gartner or Forrester. So, put it down in layman terms. Maybe you do a video yourself talking about what it means. Maybe you do a blog. Maybe you do some social posts. I will say this. You have usually 12 months. You should be pumping it for 12 months. Like if you're just going to use it for 1 month, it's not worth all the effort that you put into it.
As long as you do well, right? As long as you have somewhat. Although what you said is you could, no matter what the result is.
No matter what the result is. That's the thing. People are like, oh, no, we should not use it. And like, no, like, use it. Find the 3 strengths that they talked about. Find the highest score you got. Like, I don't know, we got a 5 for Gen AI in email. I was like, well, that's what's going to go. Like, now we're number 5. It's a 5 out of 5, right? So 5 out of 5 in Gen AI. And that's what's going to be in the banner. And it's like, it is what it is.
Rony, we spoke about so much today. There's a lot to take in here. We spoke about, for me, the overarching idea is no one analyst relations element is siloed. They're all interconnected, right? So the briefing and the inquiry and the results of a Magic Quadrant or wave or some kind of analysis, the enablement, they all kind of play together, and it comes down to building the relationships, and it's a long-term thing as opposed to a one-off.
You're playing a multi-year game, even though it looks like you're playing a 3-month game.
And it is a game, and I think you were able to give me a few ideas on how to game it. Hopefully our listeners now have a few more ideas of how they could game the system or use the system in the right way, because there is an element, other than having an awesome product, you have to know how to play the game right. And I think that's something that we spoke about a lot. Before we go, I do want to thank Google for Startups for letting us use their space. I want to thank Rotem Simon for producing this episode. Rony, I want to thank you for coming out. I know you're in between your user conference and you're traveling soon, and you were able to fit us in. I really appreciate the time. It was great to have this conversation. I feel like we just scratched the surface.
It was, for those who do not know, we were like, can we fill out an episode? And I'm like, I can talk, like, I think for 5 hours straight on analyst relations, and we'd fill it out. So it's been a pleasure. We can do it whenever you want again. We can do it like 102.
No, this feels like the intro. Let's take this as an intro. Rony, thank you so much. And please tune in to our next episode. Thank you.